we're back on the online ashram and we will continue to read in the book of uh, Vijay Gupta about Hader Khan Babaji. The next adventure. It's chapter 16, Off to Bandikui. An overpowering scent of lotus flowers floated out from the room where Babaji had stayed in our house. I could hear the sound of kittens echoing in my ears. We were all tired and went to bed quite early. The next morning I got up with an empty heart and I went about with my daily course. My brother's family had already left for Bandikoi. I was also thinking of going there. When a porter from the station came and said, Vijay Babu, your Bhai Sahib called on the railway phone from Bandikoi. He wants you to go to the photographer and collect the photographs that he took of Babaji and take them to Bandikoi with you in a day or two. I rushed to the photographer at full speed. In these days, there were no photo labs in Bharatpur. I told him to go to Agra and get the photographs developed quickly. He came the next evening and handed the entire lot to me. I decided to set out for Bandikoi in the morning. Most of my family was already there. I left in the morning by train. Babaji was staying at a garden retreat about 2 kilometers from the station where the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam was being recited and a Mahayagya was being performed for the goddess Jagadamba. The Jalani family owned the garden. There were 5 rooms and well inside the compound. Babaji had one room and his devotees occupied the rest. Shastriji was also there. He was the one who was reciting the religious stories. I reached the garden at 10 a.m. and bowed to Babaji before handing over the photographs to my elder brother. Chapter 17. Tension at Bandikoi. Hari Shankar Bhatt, his younger brother, Viswa, Viswambarji, and some devotees of Mahendra Maharaj had organized the Mahayagya in Bandikoi. However, I discovered that most devotees were instead busy discussing Babaji's entry into town. Babaji had reached Bandikoi at night, and a large assembly of followers had gathered at the station. The crowd was so huge that the station gate had accidentally broken in the ensuing melee. Babaji had been seated in a buggy, and a massive procession followed him through the town till it reached the Jalanan's garden retreat, which was situated near the main market. There was a train line running close to the garden, which went all the way to Agra. Hordes of devotees on incoming trains had happily pulled the chain to force to halt near the garden. So great was the haste to get Babaji's darshan. They descended from all directions and their arrivals and departures were constant. My stay at Bandikoi was splendid. Once again, I did not feel like returning home. My elder brother noticed this but kept his counsel. He could see that I was getting immersed in the chants of Om Namah Shivaya and that was pervading the air. Sri Vishnudut Shastri had taken to translating the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam into Hindi for the benefit of devotees from 4 to 6 p.m. People would listen to his discourse intently. This would be followed by a kirtan, which would go on until about 9 p.m. Babaji would come outside and sit on his asan during this period, spreading the luster of his radiance on all devotees. It was almost as if he had cast his luminescence over them. All of us remarked on it. Another extraordinary aspect of Babaji that we noticed was that he never needed to shave. Babaji had been in Bandikui for 4 days when a Naga Baba went into the warpath against him. He took acceptation to Babaji's decree forbidding all forms of addictive substances, including biddies in the compound. The Naga Baba had landed in the garden at around 10 in that morning and started smoking a chillum stuffed with marijuana inside the premises. Several devotees requested him to go outside to smoke, as the place was a yagyasthal, the site where a fire sacrifice takes place, and the yagya dedicated to goddess Jagadamba was going on. The Naga Baba was incensed. What kind of joke is this? So much respect for one Baba and so much disrespect for another. He parked himself outside the compound and kept up a constant commentary aimed at inciting public opinion against Babaji. He was joined by some like-minded, disgruntled elements who were happy to support him. The atmosphere became tense. Babaji asked us to maintain calm. He said, "Joy and sorrow are a part of everyone's fate in this world. Today the situation is such that where we aid, there is great sorrow, and where we are not, there is great joy. It is true that those that are bestowed with darkness are also given light. Just as the dark night is required for light, and the rose requires thorns to grow, in exactly the same way we need sorrow to spread the fragrance in our lives. We need grief to understand life. Happiness will follow thereafter. We all know that to touch a rose, one must get pierced by thorns. Babaji was transcendent. He was pretending ignorance even though he was aware of everything. The number of people supporting the Naga Baba had grown and they were raising slogans in protest. Antisocial elements had even started pelting stones from outside. Seeing the tension grow, devotees started fearing that something untoward would happen. We are living in Kali Yuga when instead of walking the path of righteousness, people prefer to tread the path of iniquity. Only those who remember God through chanting and meditation are able to walk the path of virtue in Kali Yuga. The path of bhakti, devotional worship, may be strewn with thorns and is certainly a difficult road to follow, but its end is very sweet. Throughout the day and at night, the supporters of the Naga Baba were unable to cross the boundary of the garden even though they wanted to. God knows what power prevented them from moving into the premises at night. After the kirtan ended, Babaji went to rest in his room. Some devotees followed him. "What's the matter?" Babaji asked. "You all seem very frightened." The Lord of the Three Worlds was sitting there, but the faith of his followers had been shaken. There was his, they were hesitant to articulate the several threads of thoughts running through their hearts, lest wavering their faith be revealed. It is also true that no devotee could get close to him without his full benediction. Mustering up a little courage, they said timidly that Naga Baba's opposition had vitiated the atmosphere. Hence, to avoid something untoward, we want you to leave this place with us. God always tests his devotees. "How shall we go?" asked Babaji. "We will make all the arrangement," the devotees replied. Babaji said, "Okay." As the devotees turned to leave, he said, "You can all go wherever you wish. I will not leave until the Mahayagna of the goddess is complete, because the repercussions of an incomplete sacrifice are terrible and will cause immense destruction." Hearing Babaji's word, the devotees were filled with shame and fell at his feet, holding on to him. "We are ignorant and your heart is clear." Babaji's heart was pure, and why shouldn't it have been? When Brigo Rishi had kicked Lord Vishnu on the chest to wake him up, the Lord had simply said, "Oh Sadhu, did you get hurt?" Babaji's approach to his devotees was the same. The noise outside had stopped. Perhaps the malevolent elements had gone home. We went all to lie down, but my sleep had finished. I kept wondering what would happen on the morrow. Eventually dawn crept through the darkness and pierced it with its light. Having completed the morning ablutions, all the devotees stood in row waiting for Babaji to apply chandan on them. Thereafter, Babaji went into meditation. I came out as the sun began scattering its rays and wondered how the Naga Baba was faring. I saw that he was seated on his asana with tears streaming down his face. He had fallen silent. There were 3 or 4 devotees sitting near him. It was almost time for Babaji to come out of meditation. By now, we were all wondering what kind of Leela Babaji would unleash next. People had started collecting around the Naga Baba, but he was still silent. As soon as Babaji emerged from his room and sat on his asana, the Naga Baba arose and started walking towards him. Babaji's devotees closed ranks and flanked him protectively. A slow smile broke on Babaji's face. The Naga Baba fell worshipfully on the ground and placed his head at his feet. He had his head on the ground and wept. Having prostrated himself before Babaji, he refused to get up. Babaji's Leela stunned us all. What kind of twist was this? How had it happened? Babaji summoned 2 devotees and requested them to pick up the Naga Baba and bathe him. The Naga Baba started dancing in front of Babaji and Babaji smiled. He is Batuk, the child form of Lord Shiva's assistant Bhairava. Make sure you feed him well. In that instant, All Naga Babaji's followers became Babaji's devotees. Maybe, William, you would like to do the next chapter. Do we still have time?
I still have some time.
Okay, then go ahead.
This is chapter 18. Babaji cures a paralyzed child. After the dust had settled on the Naga Baba's incident, a person came to Babaji with a child in his arms and placed him at his feet. The boy was paralyzed. The child's father begged Babaji, Prabhu, save my child. I made a huge mistake. Lakshmi Narayanji and family, Setanji, Chand Bihariji, my mother, my mother's brother, Mishri Lalji, Lalji Ram Gopalji, Shastriji, Shri Hari Shankar, a devotee from Bandu Kayukui, who was later confirmed with the title of Peer by Babaji, his younger brother Vishwambariji, Sri N.K. Gupta, and a number of other people who had come from different parts of the country were all present. Their gaze was trained on the child's father, who was repeatedly saying, Prabhu, save my child. You are Lord Shiva in the flesh. I made a mistake. Babaji smiled and confronted him with, comforted him with one hand, and a devotee asked, What on earth did you do? The man replied, My name is Gashi Mali. I was with the people who were protesting here yesterday. I also threw some stones with them. At night, I brought a black snake and left it near Babaji's room in the drain outside. We all thought that if Babaji was an incarnation of Lord Shiva, he would be safe from the snake, and if he was not, he would be exposed. I went home, but I kept feeling anxious, and my anxiety would not let me sleep. I kept thinking, what have I done? Quite often, a man's soul tries to stop him from wrongdoing, but he ignores his conscience and carries on with his misdeed, only to regret it afterwards. The man continued with his tale. My son was asleep when I went home last night, and in this morning I discovered that he had been struck with paralysis. I sent my brother to the Yagna stall and told him, Go and see if Babaji has come out. My house is a kilometer from here. All sorts of thoughts were running through my mind, and I kept praying to God that nothing untoward had happened. My brother came back and told me, Everything is fine there. I was frightened. I knew that my son had become paralyzed today because of my bad karma. Lord, I have received the fruit of my karma. You are Lord Shiva in the flesh. Please show mercy on my child and forgive me for my ignorance. Babaji was very compassionate. He melted at the anguish that had been publicly acknowledged and said softly, Go, take the vibhuti from the Havan Kund and apply it over his body. Your son will recover. Lord Shiva is also known as Bole Baba, the simple one. Still weeping, Ghazi reached the Havan and rubbed the ash from it on his afflicted son's body. A miracle occurred, and Ghazi's child recovered completely. In this country, people are unhappy when they see others hap- when see others happy and turn jealous of them. Just think, why did Ghazi Mali do what he did? This incident has been depicted by a resident of Lovan, Maheshi, in his hymn in Braj language. There are some hymns meaning, after leaving a snake and throwing stones, he himself came and confessed. Hirakandi performed a miracle, and Boli Baba forgave the one who sinned against him. This was the song. Word of Babaji's power spread in Bandikui and its surrounding areas. Thousands of devotees thronged to the garden to meet him, hoping to improve their lives and solve the problems that dogged them. After 9 days in Bandikui, Babaji left for Jaipur. By then, the whole town had begun to recognize Babaji's Leelas. Om Namah Shivaya was being hummed everywhere. Babaji's miracles were discussed endlessly, and stories about them persist to this day. The news of his departure was received with sorrow. Wherever I looked, I saw tears. The bliss that his arrival had brought was equaled by the sorrow of his departure. What kind of separation was this? We were all in the same boat. Shastriji always used to tell him, Prabhuji, Prabhu, I cannot bear being parted from you. Babaji was to take the evening train for Jaipur. All preparations were already in place, and his farewell was a noisy affair. I felt as if all of Bandiku had conversed to see him off. His car set off for Jaipur amidst the chanting of Jaikars. My brother went with him, as usual, and I returned home to Bharatpur. I was filled with gloom. At the time, I was a student in class 9 and planned to take my class 10 examinations privately. I did not want to go to school. I no longer felt like staying at home. My mind was restless. It was pulling me to Babaji. After hanging around listlessly at home for 2 days, I left for Jaipur. Babaji was staying close to the railway station in Bani Park, where an old Ram temple had a few rooms near its courtyard. There was a lot of empty space in front of the temple, where a huge platform with a throne-like chair had been built for Babaji. There were tents all around. Next chapter, chapter 19, the Divine Pool. The Mahayagya in Jaipur had been organized by Mahendra Maharaj's disciples. Prominent among them were Vaidya Mohan Lalji and my Mamaji's mother's brothers, Shyam Bihari Gorji and Chand Bihari Lalji, the names of the brothers. In one of the photographs taken at Bharatpur, Babaji had been captured standing looking like the divine form of Lord Shiva. On my first morning in Jaipur, I went for Babaji's darshan to his room. He looked at me and said, "When did you come?" "Last night, Prabhu," I replied. After applying chandan on my forehead, he said, "This old man sitting here is your guru. You must serve him well." I turned my gaze towards a gentleman who was sitting next to Maharaj. I saw a 70-year-old man with white beard. beard, beard. I was to learn later that he was Sri Govind Ballabh Pant, the priest of the Kadgaria Ashram. At that time I had no idea who he was, but nevertheless bowed to him and went out. After applying chandan, Babaji went into meditation and everyone left. My elderly guru also stepped out of the room. I followed him. My Mamaji was walking beside me. "Who is he?" I asked him. "He is the priest of the Kadgaria temple. His name is Govind Baila Pant. Kadgaria Ashram is in Nainital district and has a statue of Babaji in his previous avatar. Pantji has come from there. You had better serve him, since it is Babaji's order." I went to my guru's room and, mindful of Babaji's decree, I kept asking him how I could serve him. I would finish all the tasks that he set for me and then go back for more. For 5 days I waited on him day and night. Each morning, while applying chandan, Babaji would ask, "Is Vijay serving you well?" A pleased expression would flash on Pantiji's face, and he would reply, "He is doing very well." Shastriji and the other devotees were also very happy with my conduct. That's when I learned that Pantji was going back to Kadgaria Ashram and had issued an invitation to Babaji to attend the Ashwin Navaratri there. Babaji had accepted. Thousands of men and women were enthralled to see the divine form of God. All the deities invited by Babaji to the Mahayagya received the sacrificial offerings in their divine forms and returned to their worlds satisfied. From 4 a.m. onwards, Babaji would bestow his blessings by applying chandan on his devotee's forehead. People would return to their respective homes feeling empowered. Their sense of spirituality increased and they started feeling liberated from the miseries of life. In Jaipur, Babaji would meet people between 2 to 4 p.m. People would converge to receive his blessings and would return happier. He would release his devotees from both physical and spiritual distress. The former he would tackle at night before retiring. Word spread, and he soon became a lodestone for the infirm. He not only treated ailing devotees, but also the general public. People with all kinds of diseases would go to him, and he would treat them by sprinkling vibhuti on their heads and putting 3 pinches of it in their mouths. He would go to him, they would go to him in sickness and emerge completely cured. Innumerable devotees welcomed Babaji into their homes, where they worshipped him according to prescribed traditions. Several renowned siddhas, enlightened yogis, and sages congregated for his darshan and declared they had achieved bliss. Whenever Babaji went to a devotee's home, he would be welcomed with music played by bands that normally played at weddings. Devotees would also dance and sing kirtans for him. Several of them had arrived in Jaipur from Delhi, chief among them being Chandra Singh Ramaji's family. Ramaji, later known as Swami Fakiranandji, requested him to visit his residence in the national capital. Babaji agreed and later performed a yajna there. Much later, a businessman from Calcutta, now Kolkata, came to visit the temple. He was very happy to see the Havan Kund and kept asking questions about it. Devotees told him that Lord Hirakan had performed a yajna there during a visit. He subsequently built a beautiful temple at the Yajnastal Havan site and dedicated it to Ma Jagadamba. He installed a statue of Ma Jagadamba and also made arrangements for both service and prayers. This is how Satguru Lord Hirakan Baba inspired countless devotees to carry out myriad works of piety. Babaji acquired a new devotee. His name was Amalak Jain, and he lived in Banti Park, Jaipur. He once made a prediction about the future of the world, which is proving to be quite true today. When Babaji prepared to leave for Vrindavan from Jaipur, he said, Vijay, we want you to stay with us for a few days. I was in a fix. My affection for Babaji had been growing daily. My ties with home were being steadily weakened. I didn't know what to do. I lived with my elder brother, Shiv Charanji, in Bharatpur. My mother lived in the village. My father had died when I was just 12. It was the thought of leaving my mother and sister that formed the crux of my quandary. I did not worry much about my schooling because I was taking my class 10 exams privately. I knew I could stay with Babaji and go home for my exams. He seemed to sense my dilemma and, before I could say anything, he said, Go to Bharatpur and then come to Vrindavan. I had only been with him for a very short time, yet I already knew that he did not want to leave. I did not want to leave him. His latest direction was not just an order, but also a great blessing for me, because I felt that I was the fortunate one. He was pulling me towards him. I would be staying on, while the rest of his devotees in Jaipur would be bidding him farewell. He got into a car and was soon out of sight, leaving behind the splendor of his image with us. One devotee approached me and said enviously, Vijay, how fortunate you are. Babaji has called you. I went to Vrindavan after seeking permission from my mother and brother and reached there at around 11 a.m. Babaji was sitting on his asan and was very happy to see me. He smiled and said, It's good that you have come. Now you can stay with us for a while. Thereafter he proceeded to fuss over me, funning me to chase away the heat, much to my immense embarrassment. He He also saw to it that I ate properly. My life with Babaji began. I stayed with him as his constant companion, occasionally going home to take my exams, and which, with his grace, I passed each one of them without the slightest hurdle. This then was the start of my spiritual journey. My life had changed in the company of God. Bole Baba ki jai.
Jay. So then here we will leave you for the next week and continue at chapter 20.
Yes,
Yeah, we invite you again.
again. See you next week.